Hi, I'm Father Jim Forson, and before I offer a reflection on the gospel, I'd like to ask a favor of you. If this ministry and these reflections are of a help to you and they nourish you, I would invite you to share it with somebody else and invite them to click on this site. And the more people we have doing that, the more support we would have for this ministry. And it would be a great help to us, and I'd appreciate it if you could do that. Thank you. So today, it's the 27th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and I'd like to give you a reflection on what is a very difficult gospel. It was difficult in the time of Jesus. It's difficult in our time. It's all about divorce. So, divorce. When I was a kid growing up, I was in St. Ferdinand School in San Fernando, in the heart of the San Fernando Valley. And I think we had like maybe 500 kids or so in the school, double grades, all the levels. And out of those 500 plus kids, I'm not exaggerating, not one child came from a divorced family. It just didn't exist. We had heard about divorce, but nobody we knew was divorced at all. And I remember in my neighborhood, my mom had to pull together myself and my two sisters and explain to us that a new neighbor was moving in a few houses down and that there wasn't a dad in the family, that they were divorced. And I was shocked. A divorced family. And the kids, they really didn't play with us that much, and the mom kind of kept to herself. And as I look back on it, I wonder if it was out of a sense of shame. Because back then, if you were divorced, it was a shameful thing. And we didn't know what to call her, so we just called her the divorced lady. Not because we were being mean, but that's the only way we could identify her. She was just that unique. And so, just in my lifetime, we have gone from 0 divorce to what we currently have, about a 50 to 60% divorce rate in our country. And so when we have a gospel such as we have today, in which Jesus is very forceful in talking about divorce, it might be a very difficult thing for us to listen to, especially those of us who are Catholics, because we have that teaching in our Catholic Church that when you marry, it's a permanent binding union. You marry for life. But then what do we do with divorce? What do we say to Catholics that we know are divorced? And I would imagine just about every one of us who are Catholic know of a Catholic that is divorced. And a lot of them thought that they were excommunicated. If you get a divorce, you're a Catholic, you're excommunicated, which is, by the way, not true at all. But it carries with it that stigma. So what do we say about permanent marriage, and what do we say about divorce? Well, I think we need to begin with what Jesus said. He was asked by the Pharisees, and it was a trick question, may a man divorce his wife for any reason whatsoever? And in Jesus' time, there were 2 schools of rabbinic thought. One followed the law of Moses, and Moses would allow divorce for any reason whatsoever, and so a man could divorce his wife if, I'm not kidding, if he didn't like her cooking, or if she didn't provide him a male heir. He could divorce her. That was one school of thought. The other said, no, you can't divorce your wife for any reason whatsoever except for adultery. If there was adultery involved, then you could. But no. And one of the reasons why there was such hesitancy when it came to divorce was because, although it's disruptive in our era, it was dreadful in theirs. Women, had no property rights. They had no education. They couldn't own a house. And so if a woman gets divorced and she has her kids, she's doomed. Nobody's going to marry her. She has nowhere to go. Divorce was so disruptive an influence in that time, even the pagan Romans discouraged divorce. So there is this whole question about the appropriateness and how right or wrong it is, and why can you, swirling around Jesus at the time. And he's being asked this question, and really it's a trap. Because if he says yes to one rabbinic thought, you can divorce your wife for any reason whatsoever, well, then the others will be upset with him. And if he says no, you can't except for adultery, well, then the others will be upset with him. It's a trap either way. And so how does Jesus answer it? He answers these questions like he always answers these questions. He pushes the envelope. He turns his world upside down. And he says, Moses gave you that right to divorce because he knew how weak you were. But that's not the way God made this universe, that God created this world. In the beginning, he made them male and female, and he said, for this reason, a man shall cling to his wife, and the two shall become one. Therefore, what God joins, man may not divide. Jesus goes beyond both schools of rabbinic thought. He returns to the original design of God, the Creator. And so his teaching automatically becomes much more powerful and much more difficult than the other teachings, which is one of the reasons why in the gospel the apostles say to him, well, if that's the way it is, if there's no divorce for any reason whatsoever, then why in the world would anybody ever get married? It's too hard. It's too hard a teaching. And you know, I get that. I understand the apostles' confusion and hesitancy. I share it myself. You know, people sometimes say to me, you know, how can you be a priest? How can you be celibate? I say, how can I be celibate? Man, how can you be married? That's work. You know, we say in marriage that when you're married forever. And when you're married faithfully. And when you're married as equals, no conditions, no strings attached. That's commitment. Those are powerful vows to be making. How can you do it? And that's what Jesus is calling people to. And really, he's calling people to live the life that God, the Creator, first made for us. Because really, don't all of us want to be loved like that? To be loved forever? Sure we do. And don't all of us, when we love, want to be loved faithfully? Yes. And don't all of us want to be loved, you know, without any conditions, no strings attached, so that people will love me for better or for worse? Of course we do. That's the way we really want to be loved. And that's the vision that the church proclaims, that comes forth from the teachings of Jesus. But the church realizes that sometimes people who had no business getting married got married. And sometimes, for who knows what reason, relationships just turned horribly toxic. And so we realize as a church that sometimes marriage is going to have to end. People have to separate. And is that therefore evil or sinful in and of itself? No, it is not. And is somebody who's separating like that excommunicated in and of itself? No, of course not. The church realizes full well that sometimes the most Christian thing to do is to remove yourself from a situation where there may be terrible sin, violence against the wife or the children, or terrible drugs and alcohol, which is poisoning everyone. Sometimes you just have to get out of what I was saying, a toxic situation. The church realizes that and knows it. And those people are not excommunicated at all. Now, remarriage in the church, that's another matter altogether, and it can be difficult, and that's a subject for another time. But are those people kicked out of the church? No. Now, there are people who divorce, as Jesus said, for any reason whatsoever, and that's wrong. You know, we know about divorces that take place because, you know, somebody, let's just say the man decided to upgrade. He found a prettier woman, a more exciting one, so he just dumps his wife and kids and marries her. Is that evil? Oh yeah, you bet it is. Or somebody's just, you know, I'm bored. I'm bored, you know, it isn't fulfilling my life. I'm going to divorce this person. Is that wrong? Oh yeah, of course it is. So the church clearly proclaims that, especially in certain circumstances, divorce is absolutely wrong. And only in the best of circumstances is it ever a necessary thing to be able to safeguard the wife and child, or matter, maybe possibly even the husband himself. So the church has that understanding and approach of marriage and divorce. But we keep alive that teaching of Jesus. This is the way God made the universe. This is the way that God made man and woman. This is the way God made marriage. And we cling to that. We proclaim that. And it's really something we all hold within our hearts that we all want for ourselves. And even then, that teaching about marriage, it goes beyond marriage. Jesus is saying, you just can't treat a wife like a piece of property. You just can't throw her away like she's a piece of trash. You have to cherish her. You have to treasure her. And that teaching of Jesus is true for all of us, whether we are married, single, divorced, celibate, or somewhere in between. That teaching of Jesus, that is embracing the creative design of God, that must cherish people, well, that's true for all of us. And so what Jesus is saying to all of us in the gospel today, you must cherish one another forever, for the rest of your life.